Chapter 2. The Day. Whether you start your day with a traditional Jewish sunset or wait until the clock strikes midnight, your body is ready to call it a day when it's dark. With the exception of people that work at night, your circadian rhythm has you sleep when it's dark and work when it's light. So why would we start the day at sunset or in the middle of the night? Was this how it was from the beginning? Or was there a time when the people of Yahweh rose with the dawn of the day and called it the beginning of that cycle? Does the creation of the first day start at night, like we were taught? Since we are starting with the first day, we should see what defines the term. You should understand that the day is a cycle that contains two components, day and night. This is illustrated in Jeremiah. Jeremiah 33:20. Thus Yahweh, if we can break my covenant of the day and my covenant of the night, and that there should not be day and night in their season. Here we see that the day cycle, the season, contains two components, the covenant of the day and the covenant of the night, to that cycle. Here's a little note. Throughout this study, when referring to a day, this will include a full 24-hour cycle, which includes the day hours and the night hours, unless otherwise specified. When we read Genesis, most of us have the understanding that we are starting out in the darkness. But what if this darkness was not night? Upon closer examination, we see that it's not referring to a physical darkness, the night, at all. The darkness that is defined is one of chaos, directly related to the formless void that the earth was in at that time, not the night's darkness we experience after the sun sets every day. Let's take a closer look at the first chapter of Genesis and see what it tells us about the first day of the first year of creation. The chapter starts out by establishing time in the beginning, space, Yahweh created the heaven, and mass, the earth. These three entities must be present for time counting. Notice that the sun, stars, and moon have yet to be created. These celestial orbs will not be created for another 3 days, and therefore cannot be used as the start of the day or night season. We are only dealing with a chaotic darkness and light. Genesis 1:2. And the earth was without form, tohu, confusion, unreality, emptiness, and void, bohu, emptiness, void, waste, and darkness, koshek, darkness, obscurity, was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of Yahweh moved upon the face of the waters. At this point, there is no form to the earth, which is tohu and bohu, and there is darkness upon the face, koshek. He is not speaking of the darkness of night, he is speaking of the chaos moving upon the face of the waters. Koshek, H. 28:22. 1. Darkness, obscurity, secret place, from H. 28:21. Koshek, the dark, hence, literally, darkness. Figuratively, misery, destruction, death, ignorance, sorrow, wickedness, darkness, night, obscurity. The light is introduced. Genesis 1:3, and Yahweh said, "Let there be light," and there was light. He saw that it was good. Then he divided the light from the chaotic darkness, and he named it first, calling it day. In verse 4, we are still dealing with the first component of the day season that light created. Genesis 1:4, and Yahweh saw the light, that it was good, and Yahweh divided the light from the darkness. And from the mechanical translation, and Elohim saw the light, given that it was functional, and Elohim made a separation between the light and the darkness. The light he created divided, which means came between or separated, the chaos. He called the darkness night, which is Lael, H. 39:15. Interesting how darkness and night have two different words to describe them. First it was chaos, darkness, koshek. Then after he divided it, it became night, Lael, night as opposed to day. This night is the second component of the day cycle. Then in this verse, Genesis 1:5, and Yahweh called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening, Ereb, and the morning, Boker, were the first day. The evening, Ereb, that follows is referring to a mixture of night, Lael, and light right before the sun rises. When that happens, the first day season is over and the next day season begins. A day cycle that contains light, mixture, dark, mixture, Then the next day season begins with light. Looking closer at the word Areb, we see it's a mixing of light and dark. That happens twice a day. It is the crepuscular, of or like twilight, dim, light that is found before and after the night season of a day. This light belongs to the day sky, because light invades the sky, and the lesser lights of the night sky, the Milky Way, are no longer visible in their garland of beauty, which is called the Mazzaroth. When light breaks into the sky, notice, not the sun, the first day is over, and the next day season begins. As we continue through Scripture, we find more definition in the narrative concerning the cycle beginning in the morning. Genesis 1:16. And Yahweh made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. The phrase after the colon, he made, is grammatically and contextually out of place, and has been added to the text. It doesn't appear in any of the Dead Sea Scrolls of Genesis. So, we have the order of the lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. Now I ask you, why start your cycle in the lesser light? We are talking about the Creator's greatness and glory here. How do you see that? In the dark. This is the first of many times where the information is right in front of us, and we never saw the forest through the trees. How did we collapse darkness and night and make them mutually exclusive? How did we miss this all these years? Now let's move on. We have established through Yahweh's word that his first day cycle began with light, followed by night, and ending in morning, while starting the next day cycle at the same moment. The following is by no means a comprehensive list of examples of the day cycle starting with light. There are multiple stories in the Torah alone that vividly illustrate this concept, but here are just a few. Also, if you notice, the sun still has not been mentioned. Genesis 19:33 and 34. This is about Lot and his daughters. So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he was not aware of it when she lay down and when she arose. And it came to be on the next day that the firstborn said to the younger, See, I lay with my father last night. Let us make him drink wine tonight as well, and you go in and lie with him, so that we keep the seed of our father. The next day followed the night. Exodus 10:13, the locust plague. And Moses stretched out his rod over the land of Egypt, and Yahweh brought an east wind to the land all that day and all that night. Morning came, and the east wind brought the locusts. That day belongs to that night. Then the morning came. Exodus 18:13. And it came to be on the next day that Moses sat to the rightly rule the people, and the people stood before Moses from morning until evening. The next day starts in the morning. Exodus 16:22 through 27. And it came to be on the 6th day that they had gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. And all the rules of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said to them, This is what Yahweh has said. Tomorrow is a rest, a Sabbath set apart to Yahweh. That which you bake, bake, and that which you cook, cook. And lay up for yourselves all that is left over, to keep it until morning. And they laid it up until morning, as Moses commanded. And it did not stink, and no worm was in it. And Moses said, Eat it today, for today is a Sabbath to Yahweh. Today you do not find it in the field. Gather it 6 days, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, there is none. And it came to be that some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather, but they found none. Yahweh said, Tomorrow was Sabbath. Then morning comes, and Moses said, Eat it today, for today is the Sabbath. Genesis 8:22. As long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease. Here it is worth mentioning that the phrase day and night appears 28 times in the scripture, which is twice as many as the phrase night and day. The order of the day preceding the night in scriptures is used 84 times. And when determining a set period of time, for instance, 40 days and 40 nights, which appears 11 times, the scriptures always uses the order of day and night. Why would the scriptures record a count of days starting with a day if the day starts in the night? Where did this idea originate? Since we have shown some examples of what Scripture says, let's see where the tradition of starting the day at night or evening came from. Quote, "There can be no doubt that in pre-exilic times the Israelites reckoned the day from morning to morning. The day began with the dawn and closed with the end of the night following it." Quote, "To the light he gives the name day, to the darkness the name night. Thus the work of the first day, reckoned probably from morning to morning, is accomplished. The period of light is followed by evening and darkness, which comes to an end with the next morning when the second day begins." Quote, "In the Old Testament, the earlier practices seems to have been considered that the day began in the morning. In Genesis 19:34, for example, the morrow, or next day, clearly begins with the morning after the preceding night." Quote, "That the custom of reckoning the day as beginning in the evening and lasting until the following evening was probably of late origin is shown by the phrase, 'tarry all night.'" Judges 19:6-9. "So they sat down, and the two of them ate and drank together. And the young woman's father said to the man, 'Please agree to stay all night, and let your heart be glad.' And when the man arose to go, his father-in-law urged him. Therefore he lodged again. And he rose early in the morning on the 5th day to go, but the young woman's father said, 'Please refresh your heart.' So they delayed until afternoon, and both of them ate. And the man arose to go, he and his concubine and his servant. But his father-in-law, the young woman's father, said to him, 'See, the day is now drawing toward evening. Please spend the night. See, the day is coming to an end. Stay here, and let your heart be glad, and you shall rise early tomorrow for your journey, and you shall go out to your tent.'" The context clearly shows that the day is regarded as beginning in the morning. In the evening the day declined, and until the new day, morning, arrived, it was necessary to tarry all night. In Israel, the day was for a long time reckoned from morning to morning, and it was, in fact, in the morning, with the creation of light, that the world began. The distinction of day and night, and time too, began on a morning. The opposite conclusion has been drawn from the refrain which punctuates the story of creation. Quote, "There was evening and there was morning, the first, second, etc. day." This phrase, however, coming after the description of each creative work, which clearly happens during the period of light, indicates rather the vacant time till the morning, the end of the day and the beginning of the next work. The change of reckoning must therefore have taken place between the end of the monarchy and the age of Nehemiah. This would bring us to the beginning of the exile. When further researching the history of the Israelites' exile, we find that the Jews picked up many traditions during their Babylonian capture and took these traditions with them when they reestablished the land after their exile. Quote, "When the Jews returned to Palestine after their Babylonian exile, 516 BCE, they brought back with them the Babylonian astronomy and way of reckoning time." Especially after the Babylonian exile, significant and enduring changes occurred in the Israelite calendar, showing that the Jews gradually adopted the Babylonian calendar of the time. The 7-day week persisted despite its failure to be divided evenly either in the month or the year. The day, however, was counted from evening to evening after the Babylonian fashions. Quote, "So far as we know, the Babylonian calendar was at all periods truly lunar. The month began with the evening, when the new crescent was first time again visible shortly after sunset. Consequently, the Babylonian day also begins in the evening." And finally, from the Handbook of Biblical Chronology. In the Old Testament, the earlier practice seems to have been to consider that the day began in the morning. In Genesis 19:34, for example, the morrow, or next day, clearly begins with the morning after the preceding night. Right here, we see the influence that the Babylonian exile had on the Jewish calendar and the corruption of the beginning of the day count. It's important to understand, and we can't stress this enough, when the day starts, for it keeps us on the straight and narrow and provides a proper start for the year count. So far, we have established the daylight and the nighttime as the day cycle, but have made no mention of the very orbs that are used to count and calculate the calendars of today. As we continue, in Genesis 1:14, he introduces the lights in the firmament of heaven. And Elohim said, "Let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs, a sign or a signal, and seasons, moed, appointed place, time, or meeting, and for days and years." The purpose of the lights in the firmament is to divide the day from the night. They are also for signs, a distinguishing mark, which are always visible to the naked eye. They are not for counting, since the count has already begun. We know Yahweh has special days in the year that mark feasts or Shabbats. These days are set apart from other days of the year for meeting the Creator. Unfortunately, this word has replaced all seasons as Yahweh's feasts. We forgot that there are many other kinds of seasons found in His creation. Let's take a moment to look at the word for seasons from the Strong's. H4150, moed. Appointed place, appointed time, meeting. Remember our rule of first mention. Keeping in mind context, it works with dictionaries also. The first definition is an appointed place and shows locally, not time. Time is the second definition. The lights were fixed in a specific place or location in the firmament to set in place the agricultural, daily, and yearly events that were to be repeated for all time. They are also to keep the seasons of summer and winter in their respective positions. They are also to be lights in the firmament to shine upon the earth. Later on is when we read that they are for days and years. There are no qualifying feasts to denote any holy day mentioned in Leviticus 23 for Yahweh's feast at this point in Genesis 1. This is the first mention of the word moed, and its context speaks to the placement, ordinances, and the job of these lights. This appointment comes 3 days before the first set-apart day given, the Shabbat. We assume, when speaking of the two great lights, that the text is speaking about the sun and the moon. We have been taught that these orbs are for the purpose of staking out the special appointed feasts that Yahweh demands from His people, when they weren't even present to count the first 3 days. This thought cannot be further from the truth. There is no mention in Scripture of the word moon until Genesis 37:9. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and behold, the sun, Shamash, and the moon, Yerach, and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. This is 1400 years after creation. The only known orbs being mentioned in Genesis 1:14-16 is the stars. Even the sun isn't mentioned by name until Genesis 15:12. And when the sun, Shamash, was going down, and deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him. We think the greater light is the sun, and the lesser light the moon, but we know from science that the moon doesn't produce its own light. It only reflects the sun's light. Also, from our perspective on Earth, the sun and moon are the same size, which is the reason we have eclipses. The etymology proves this out further. In the Hebrew language, the moon is a masculine noun, and the sun is gender neutral, containing both feminine and masculine properties. Light, or, is a feminine noun. Therefore, the masculine moon could not produce feminine light. That could only be done by greater light, the sun. By looking closer at the word lesser in Hebrew, we see the word is not describing the intensity of light, but the size of the light. The word for lesser is katon, meaning young, small, insignificant, unimportant. Strong's continues with abbreviated, that is diminutive, literally, in quantity, size, or number, or figuratively, in age or importance, least, less, little one, small, young. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 18, the ordinances of the lights are given, one to rule over the day, the other over the night, and to divide the light from the dark, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And Yahweh saw that it was good. When we look up at the sky during the day, can we see the garland of stars called the Milky Way or the Mazzaroth? No, we can't, because the sun overpowers the light of the stars during the day. Jeremiah 31:35. Thus saith Yahweh, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divideth the sea when the waves thereof roar. Yahweh of hosts is his name. The stars are the light ruling the night, and the moon has agricultural ordinances that we will explore in a later chapter discussing the moon. Also, the stars are faithful to the night sky, unlike the moon, which can be seen during daylight hours for much of its lunation cycle. In summary, we have come to these conclusions. 1. The scriptures start the day with light, not the sun, since it wasn't created until 3 days into the count from creation. 2. We have discovered that there are 2 components to the day cycle, light, called day, and darkness, called night. The greater light, ruling the day, is also responsible for the light of the moon, as discovered in the first chapter of Genesis. 3. We have established that the lesser light in scriptures is the light of the Mazzaroth, the garland of stars, or more commonly known as the Milky Way. 4. This division of day and night establishes the counting of the first day, of the first month, of the first year of creation. A very simple way to count our days. Everything we have discussed is visible with the naked eye, and no calculations or computations are necessary. Over time, we have changed and twisted what a day means in order to make it fit with our preconceived notions of how it starts. How the children of Israel lost their position as light bearers to the world stretches the imagination. Yet, here we are starting our day in the dusk of evening, or in the middle of the night. Since we have firmly established that the day begins with the light dividing the night, we are now ready to start adding to this knowledge, and finally piece together an acceptable count to Yahweh's holy set-apart feasts.